Hello, heathens. I'm back. If you're listening on Spotify, then you just heard that sweet, sweet Eminem, and you know why I'm back. Because it just feels so empty without me. So, here we go. This is my first in quite a while, and I'm just going to get right into it. You don't need the whole fucking story. Today, we're going to talk about community, and I'm not giving you an outline. You can just listen to this or not. I'm not going to give you the play by play in advance. So, as much as I really needed my hiatus, I'm glad to be back because I missed doing this, and I have a lot to say as per usual. So, here goes. We've all heard that the grass is greener on the other side. We've all heard that expression. And because of the internet, we've also heard, most of us, that the grass is greener where you water it. And I think that second part is crucial for the first part, actually meaning anything beyond just don't be jealous, don't be petty. You can say that all you want, but people will a lot of the time still be pretty fucking petty. So, since my being canceled by people who don't actually have the authority to recognize me to begin with, I've been applying that idea to my life because how the fuck can something grow if I don't water it? And worse than that, how can I sit around complaining and criticizing specifically about the so-called pagan and witch community, which does not exist, or at least does not exist in the way that people claim it does? How can I criticize that if I am not actively working to water it, to grow that earth and grow that garden to the best of my ability in my own life? I can't. Because you can call me a bitch if you want to. I resemble that remark. I would prefer to not be called a whiner, because whining is something I see as pretty unforgivable, especially when you don't even lift your fucking pinky to make anything better. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And just in case you haven't heard my thoughts on this before, I do want to say this pretty clearly. Community is not just like an assortment of random people who don't like each other and actively want to watch each other crash and burn and who actively enjoy it. And that is what the so-called witch pagan community online, at least, that is really just what it is. It is a loose association of people who have not necessarily anything in common, who typically do not like each other, and who actively enjoy watching each other crash and burn. They do not try to connect with each other in a way that would suggest community or even humanity a lot of the time. So I'm not going to pretend as if like some retweet clubs between people who are mutually trying to chase clout is some kind of community, especially not when like they're not actively contributing anything. They stir up drama, they stir up pettiness, and overall, don't really talk about actual magic all that much. Like, let's just look at that. If someone is making this whole identity as, I'm this mystical person, I'm a witch, but they never fucking talk about ritual, they never talk about paganism, and their understanding of magic is like a child's Wicca phase, no, you don't. You don't represent the community, and I would say that you shouldn't even be allowed to call yourself a witch, but that's another fucking situation. So, anyways, what was I saying? Yeah, so in the time that I've reduced my involvement online, obviously, if you're listening to this, you probably know, I haven't done this in months. Mostly because honestly, like, this might shock some of you who live on the internet. I actually have a life, and a lot of it came up at the same time. But mostly I was just recalibrating and deciding what I wanted to bring. I've never really wanted to, like, be someone that just teaches 101 witchcraft. I'm not really in a place to teach. I'm kind of narrowing my own focus in my own life. I'm kind of deciding to just focus on druidry. But in terms of that watering it so it becomes green of my own actions, I decided that it was high time to start a real life meetup, an actual social group, not necessarily a coven or anything like that, but just start a social group for people who want to talk shop about actual magic, about actual paganism, to get into the myths and to get into the gods and actually talk about what it is that we are supposed to be doing, that we supposedly have in common, that allegedly makes us a community. Though again, I will say we are not. We're all doing different shit. We don't necessarily have anything in common with each other, up to and including actually doing magic. Um, so it was important to me to have this be in real life and not some kind of Zoom or Discord thing, and to be very clear about the fact that this is not some kind of continuation of the bickering that happens on the internet. This is not about discourse. This is not about your fucking opinions. This is like, okay, let's get into the actual fucking magic. And this is not a new idea for me. I had originally tried to do this a couple of years ago, and I was then wanting to call the original group Muttcraft for a few different reasons. The idea with Muttcraft is that it was about the craft. It was about the witchcraft part, the magic, and embracing the like mutt pride of, yeah, I am mixed ethnically for one. I do pull from different cultures for two. And my magical working partners at that time were also from different ethnicities and different styles of magic. And that was the entire fucking point. It was just let's get that out of the way really quick. This is about the magic. This is not about anything else. So, because people don't actually realize this. Like, it's not some kind of secret. I am ethnically half Persian Jewish. My mother's entire side of her family is Persian Jewish. My father's side is basically European mutt. We're like Irish, German, English descended. So that this is getting, just as I said, we're just getting into it really quick this episode. I am all for people connecting to their heritage. That is awesome. There's nothing wrong with that, especially like as a way of getting into practice. But the thing is, if you're going to actually like call yourself a practitioner, you can't just like walk into circle and like show off your pedigree instead of what you actually know, or instead of what you can actually do. And I've been called some like, I talk more about the crazy left-wing side of things because I just deal with them more often, but every once in a while I do get some like deranged incel who realizes the not secret that I am half Persian Jewish, and will give me like a piece of his mind, I guess. And the Muttcraft thing, it was a few different reasons, but it was partially like some guy had found his way into my inbox and was like, even one drop of that filthy mutt blood like ruins the chalice or whatever. And I was like, that's a great image. I'm totally going to take that. I also told him to post physique because he shockingly had no pictures of himself up, and he did not. So anyways, yeah, let me go back to my notes because I'll just go off. But that's it. Okay, this is not the whole point of the episode, but this is the other thing. If you are putting ethnicity, race, whatever, above literally everything else, you don't actually believe in magic. This is some kind of like glorified race LARPing for you. And again, you're not focusing on witchcraft. You are not focusing on the real ritual or religion of it. It is just maybe at best like cultural connection for you. So that's, to say the least, not what I am doing, and that it was more important to me at that time to make that kind of point. And anyways, I could not, that group never took off because this was around the same time. This is also not a secret that I'm in the Los Angeles area, and the lockdowns hit pretty hard right around the time that I had that idea. So let's go back. What was I saying? Oh, in my notes, I ranted quite a bit more about putting pedigree before practice. Let's see. I think I just wrote this little note. I wrote, by all means, please take that to the gods or show up to a ritual and see what fucking difference it makes. It's a loser mentality at the bare minimum because the craft is a skill. It is a muscle, if you will. And you have to work to become proficient at it and good with it. So I'm not impressed by someone just listing their fucking lineage or by them self-flagellating over their own lineage. Like, that works both sides. Because it's something that you have nothing to do with. Like, if we're supposedly meeting because of witchcraft and paganism, I am impressed by your proficiency in those realms. What do you know? What can you do? What are your actual abilities? And that's something that's funny to me too about this so-called community. No one talks about actual ability anymore. So I can, I'm left to conclude that they don't actually have any. So, anyways, you get the idea with the inspiration for the name Muttcraft. COVID happened. But I just want to say, because I've been getting a couple of really sweet comments from people. Maybe I should. What are we just sitting here in my leggings? I've gotten some very kind comments from people who are interested in the group that I've started and have said things like, oh, I wish I was closer, I wish I was local, but I'm out of town or I'm out of the state. And I really just want to say, do not be afraid to start something in your own area, because paganism especially was always supposed to be regional. Like this idea that we're this homogenized universalist thing where like we're all supposed to be doing the same thing across these great distances makes no sense. And some people have been like nervous to start their own groups, and I just want to say, when I started with the Muttcraft concept, I tried to have one meetup before the lockdown things really took off, and it was in a public park. It was basically me and one of my best friends at that time, and it was basically just us and a picnic blanket, and the only other person who showed up was a guy who wanted to be my personal submissive and didn't actually care about the craft. And he thought my name was Billith. It was really just like comically funny in how much it didn't go the way that I wanted it to go. I think me and my friend ended up going to IHOP or something, like, and that happens, you know, like things are not, you're not going to start the next like greening festival or Pacific Circle or whatever. You're not going to start some great movement with like 5,000 or 500 or whatever your goal is, number of people, immediately. So do not worry about that. Where was I going with this? Yeah, so the idea got shelved. I pulled it out again recently. And I just said straight up, I want a simple social meetup for actual fucking practitioners to just get together and talk about the craft, talk about paganism, and the only rules are be respectful, for one. Like, no bullshit, don't start like going crazy in person, I will shut you down very quickly. And to leave your politics and your drama at the door and actually just talk about the magic. I cannot emphasize that enough, because it's a matter of focus. Like, that is what we're supposedly here to do. Like, let's go into ritual construction and trance and astral travel and, you know, dream interpretation and all this stuff. Because shockingly, that is not interchangeable with activism. And I will continue to rant about that. But anyways, for anyone that wants to start that kind of thing, for one, if you're around LA, you are welcome to show up to mine if you can be a normal fucking person. I don't care if you're awkward. You can be awkward, but let's not be fucking psychotic. But just don't give up the first time you fail at something or that it doesn't go the way that you want it to. I've been thinking about that as well. About things growing where you water it. And don't give up when you're seen doing something stupid, even. Like, don't give up when you get embarrassed. Don't give up when things don't go how you want them to. Because that is true not just in terms of starting a group, but just in general of, like, people who get really, really worried about, oh, well, I was awkward at that party or I was seen being anxious or whatever. Like, in real life, the internet's a different story, but in real life, people have pretty fucking short memories. No one is going to bed stressing out about, like, you not being perfectly articulate all the time. No one is stressing out about, like, you being kind of weird. Most of us are. You know, being a human being means you're fucking awkward sometimes, and it means you fuck up sometimes. Just keep showing up. That's really what's important. And in terms of cliches that I like, nobody cares. That's usually repeated as like a defeatist, bitter, oh, nobody cares about me, nobody cares what I do. It's usually repeated as a negative thing or something that's harsh or bitter or whatever. I actually find the idea that nobody cares really reassuring. Because everything that worries us and everything that stresses us out, everything that makes us feel worthless or stupid or incapable, nobody fucking cares. Nobody cares about your personal insecurities. Nobody cares about your fucking drama. Nobody cares if you just got your heart broken. Nobody cares if you just got an F on a test. When you walk into a room, no one knows the events that happened leading up to you being in that room, going to that meetup, showing up at the gym, going to a ritual for the first time, doing anything. Nobody knows where you just came from unless you tell them. So all they know is you're showing up, you're fucking trying, and you're moving forward. So if there's anyone asshole-ish enough to give you shit for being awkward, like we all are sometimes, these are not people who are trying in life. that's a pretty big thing in general, is there's a lot of people who don't even try, who do a lot of talking and a lot of criticism, and I'm just completely uninterested. So there's plenty of good cliches on this too. You're never going to get hated on by someone who's busier than you. We just don't have the fucking time. So don't let them see you sweat. Keep plugging away. Don't let your dreams be dreams. Set goals and apply yourself until they happen. That is my my motivational aspect of this podcast. Although, as Jocko says, I am bigger on discipline than motivation. Motivation is fickle. You get the idea, blah, blah, blah. But I want to get back to the idea of community. What we have is obviously not perfect. What you have in your own town might not be perfect either. It might be kind of fucked up. It might be barely functional. It might not be functional at all. Maybe there's nothing going on. Maybe people are used to doing things in a certain way, and that way doesn't resonate with you. That's kind of an issue I have in, my general area, is there's plenty of people who meet up and do paganism or pagan adjacent things, and I'm like, okay, I love this. I love your energy. This isn't quite how I roll. Let me see what I can do about that. So do what you got to do. I'm going to skip some of my other notes here because I think I'm repeating myself about not being afraid to fail. And I feel like some of you probably just want to hear more about the whole cancellation debacle, especially since I haven't podcasted since that whole thing. And I will say a few things about it. Although probably nothing as juicy or salacious as some of you want it to be. And that's intentional on my part. I really dislike this whole thing that, like, people's personal lives should become a public spectacle for, you know what, because I got into it with someone on Twitter and it blew up. That does not mean that my life is, gets to be wide open for whoever wants to hear about it. That's completely unreasonable, and I'm not going to participate with that kind of thing. That being said, I did learn quite a bit from the experience, and I'll share some of my input from it. When I was really, really in the shit of it and getting the highest level of harassment and just like pure, unfettered, ignorant ass hatred, just like ignorant shit from people who had no fucking clue what they were talking about, and also did not care how clueless they were, I reached a point where I felt like there was this question hanging over my head of having to pick between what was important to me. That I needed to either pick paganism, between talking about magic, doing magic, what have you, publicly, or, on the other hand, social criticism, whatever it is you want to call what I was doing more of at that time, the being more on Twitter, the just mouthing off, my podcast, whatever. And I felt like in my mind that I was just going to choose the actual living, breathing paganism, because to this day, ultimately, that is what is worth it to me. That is the point. I remember locking my account down and just kind of stepping away in a big way, because I'm like, it's not even relevant to what I want to fucking do with my time. And I went to a real life Beltane ritual, and one of probably the best. This is not a secret. I love the Green Man in North Hollywood. They put on the best Beltane ritual I've ever been to. I've been for, I think at this point, many years in a row, barring COVID and whatnot. But I went and I saw the people dressed up, and I danced around the maypole, and I did magic with my people, and I was like, yeah, this is it. This is what matters. This is what's important. This is my purpose. And I had this just huge sense of purpose and relief with what I was supposed to be doing. And that hasn't changed. But the more that I have sat with that, the more that I've realized that my passion for real life ritual, real life practice, is exactly why I will not shut up. And it is exactly why I will not give a fucking inch to this destructive, hateful, cultish mentality that quite literally corrupts, poisons, and destroys everything it touches. That completely annihilates everything that it is allowed to touch, basically. Like, there is no giving an inch with this shit. So I am no longer asking myself the question of either paganism or not biting my tongue. That's not what I'm asking, and it's also an inherently unfair question. I am going to ask the people that practice magic and actually do paganism, are we going to keep magic alive or not? are we going to let it get savaged by this shit that wants to make everything about itself and turn people against each other? Are we going to actually be pagan? Or is literally every single thing that you do about a highly specific, dogmatic form of activism? Because let's be very clear. If you are only or even primarily focused on critical theory and, like whatever this kind of dogmatic woke activism is, that is not traditional witchcraft. That is not occultism. That is not pagan practice. And I know people are already going to be crying and pissing themselves and, throwing up and whatever at hearing that. They are not the same thing the way that witchcraft and therapy are not the same thing. You can do two things at the same time. They are not interchangeable, and that's something that people need to stop ceding ground on. I've long thought that the only actual, political cause that has any business being at all attached to paganism is environmentalism. And I don't personally have a way of doing that. I just think, okay, if you're going to connect it to any cause, then caring about the earth when a lot of us are doing earth veneration or have this spiritual relationship with the earth, then environmentalism makes sense. The rest of it is up to people to decide, and I don't want to fucking hear any crying about it. So, where am I not? Basically just that, activism is activism, witchcraft is witchcraft. And while to some people, to some individuals, those are connected, to suggest that something like herbalism is interchangeable with some specific political opinion, that astral projection, trance, dream workshop, any of the actual practices that we do in ritual, in magic, that's interchangeably identical to activism, you're either delusional or you know that you're lying to say that. You are either stark raving fucking mad and you don't know what reality is, or you know damn well that you're lying and you are lying to further your own narrative. In which case, you can lie to yourself all you want, but do not try and shove that down everyone else's throat. Because I have said this before, and I will say it again. Witchcraft, it's not some universal practice, right? We are not necessarily doing the same thing. I'm not doing the same thing as a left-hand path practitioner. It doesn't mean that they are not witches or that I'm not a witch. There's a million different little... there are so many different traditions. I don't know how many there are. That is the point. This is not the Vatican. This is not Catholicism. There are many, many different living currents of magic. So... ugh. Anyways, I hate to give, just destructive, detractory people attention, but I do want to make some actual examples of how this shit is destructive in real time. There was an instance pretty recently that serves as a good example of this, so I will briefly summarize it. This kid on the internet who declares himself the Witch King, which is hilarious because to my knowledge, he has zero authority to do that. And sure, to some degree, you can call yourself whatever you want. I've said this before, if you've listened to any of my past stuff. Priestess is my dom honorific. I earned it in a kink sense. It's not any kind of magical title. I picked priestess instead of goddess when I was apprenticing because that was more what I was doing. That just felt more relevant to my actual life. What I was doing was non-sexual. I was basically fusing kink with magic to lead people through cathartic experiences. So I'm I would rather go by priestess than goddess because this is not about me. And then that led to me kind of just quitting because I'm this is not what I want to be doing. I've spoken about this before. That is a different episode. But anyways, while you can call yourself whatever you want online, it's just especially funny to call yourself the Witch King while having no authority to do so and trying to tell other people what to do. And this is where I was going with my rant just now when I lost my train of thought. The thing about there being a million different traditions and there's no unifying principle to that, we're not doing the same thing. What is, or at least should be universal, is this spirit of heresy. And I've spoken about that with mega canceled Georgina before, who I'm still fucking friends with. You guys can suck my dick and kiss my ass. She's a good person. I've spoken to her a million times. I will continue to speak to her. Suck my nuts. We've spoken about this before because she actually knows what witchcraft is. That is originally why I was just drawn to becoming friends with her because I'm like, oh, you've clearly done some actual research. Like, you know what you're talking about. This is the thing of having ADD. You tell a whole story before you can tell a story. But what I'm saying here is the one thing we should have in common, if we have nothing else in common, is heresy. It is questioning everything. It is the spirit of being heretical. Because by virtue of being witches, we reject like how most people do religion. And it's not about being reactionary. It's just like, nope, I am going to mediate spirit for myself. You will not tell me how to think. You will not tell me what to do. You will not tell me how to live my life. That is what witchcraft is about. It is rebellious. Like, actually, and not just like... I will say this as a proud fucking bisexual woman. If you live in somewhere like LA, you're not a rebel for coming out anymore. Like, let's be really fucking honest. Being a rebel is questioning how everyone is telling you to think and behave and how to live your life, whatever that is. So, yeah, what we should have in common is that X-Files, like, question everything, I'm gonna decide for myself kind of thing. But anyways, I was trying to make an example and I distracted myself. Anyways, this guy who calls himself the Witch King, he goes on this really just hilarious tirade about how white people, not only that we can't do ancestor magic, that we can't do ancestral veneration, but that we don't have ancestors because all of our ancestors are oppressors and colonizers, and that they're just these evil, evil demons who should be forgotten and not ever acknowledged, etc. And, you know, obviously there's so many layers of why that's batshit fucking insane, on top of just being wrong. I truly, I think that he was just looking for attention, and congrats, he got it. I think he locked his account down shortly afterwards. How does that fucking feel? A lot of people, you know, like, very rightfully pushed back on it and were taking the time to explain what's wrong with it. I'm not going to bother. That's not the point. I think if you have half a brain, you understand what's wrong with that brain dead fucking take. What I am going to say is that this is an example of how that kind of activism, that cultish mentality, it is not witchcraft. It is not paganism, and this is an example of how it destroys everything it touches and replaces it with itself. It is like a fucking parasite leviathan of an ideology. And it's just ironic because when people say shit like that, it's very clear, oh, you don't know what ancestral veneration is. And you see that a lot, like just with that particular thing, for example, of all these people, because they don't know shit about witchcraft. They only know about activism. They think, oh, ancestral magic is when you literally worship every single one of your individual ancestors and co-sign everything they did for their whole life, and you worship them without question, just, you know, fully, like, everything you ever did was right and great. Like, that's just batshit levels of ignorance. And like I'm saying, if all you know is activism, then of course you would think that they are not the same fucking thing. So, anyways, there's a few different examples of this kind of thing. But I will just say, like, not only does it replace any understanding of witchcraft just with only seeing things through the lens of that kind of activism, it will just keep you at the most ignorant, boneheaded level of practice, if you can even call it practice. Like, you used to have to actually earn the title of witch. Like, it wasn't just something you could call yourself, it was a title. Now, you know, because of the way that things have gone, I think I've talked about this before, of the coven structure falling out of favor, just falling out of practice, just due to the fact that more people became interested in it than there were elders to initiate them. So solo practice took off more and more, and then it was, okay, if you do magic, you're a witch. And now it's, if you call yourself a witch on the internet, then you are. So I'm not going to, like, keep up with trying to tell people what they can or can't call themselves. That's never been my obsession, partially because I'm a fucking adult and I have things to do. And, like, telling people to not be fucking stupid it would be a full-time job. But I guess I'll just circle back. It is hot, guys, so I'm ranting extra because it's hot as fuck, and I'm trying to not run my AC all day. Contrary to what my haters on both sides probably think, I am not getting that sweet, sweet white supremacy money on this side, and I'm also not getting that Protocols of the Elders of Zion money on the other side. I do occasionally get some simp money, though. Love you guys. Anyway, this is what I mean, though, with, like, I'm not gonna ask myself to choose between pushing back against this shit or doing, or picking paganism and picking magic, because they're directly connected in this exact way. My focus on real life ritual, real life paganism, real magic, that is why I will continue to hold firm against cancel culture, against the cultish control tactics of this like woke mob ideology, because it would destroy magic. You cannot just like sit there while something is like trying to actively destroy your like all of your traditions and everything that you've spent years loving, that I will spend the rest of my life loving. So it's not an either or. It's I do have to actively push back against this shit, because otherwise you're gonna get more people saying shit like white people don't have ancestors, white people should not honor their ancestors magically, because we're all just like evil, demonic pieces of shit. And obviously the kid who said this was white, by the way. I'm pretty sure he lives in the Midwest. And it's a goddamn shame, because I'd spoken with him a couple times, like several months ago, pre-cancellation or whatever, and he had some decent things to say. Like, funny enough, when you talk to people like human beings and you talk again about the actual magic, that's where a connection can actually happen. And if we weren't obsessed with this other shit, we might know that. But, you know, when I started out with all of this, I just wanted to be left alone. I just wanted to do my thing, like do my magic, do my druidry, hang out with my girlfriend, and just like exist in peace. And what I have learned is the harsh but I guess reassuring reality of life is that the people who just want to be left alone, we will always lose to the people that want to win. Because the people that harassed me, the people that, you know, to this day, like talk shit about me, that I've never even spoken to, a lot of them, they are not trying to just be left alone. They are trying to bully everyone who doesn't agree with them into being their personal punching bag. They are not trying to be left alone. They are trying to get you to comply. And they will lie, bully, harass, get you fired, go after your livelihood, harass the people in your social circle. I had people pressuring my friends in real life to disavow me. And because I actually connect with people for who they are, my actual friends don't do shit like that because they know my heart and they know who I am and they know what I stand for. And that's the sad fucking thing, although they don't have a lot of my sympathy. People who live like this, they live scared because they know that their friends, and if you're listening to this, that's heavy air quotes, the people they consider friends will turn on them and feed them to the dogs in a fucking second if they step out of line. My friends will not do that because we're actually friends. I'm not just using them to get clout. I'm not using them as eye candy. I'm not using them to make myself look good. If I am friends with someone, it will be because I care about them as a human being. And if I end a friendship with someone, it will be because something that they do irrevocably does not sit right with me, and that is my decision to make. It is not because of other people pressuring me. It will never be because I'm getting, like, you cannot bully me into ditching my friends, and you cannot bully me into, like, throwing people under a fucking bus. I can ultimately decide that what someone chooses to do doesn't sit right with me, and I'm still not gonna, like, trash their name. Because that's not how I roll. And that's also why I will never live in the kind of fear that these people live in, because they know that everyone around them would sell them out to make themselves look good in a fucking second. So, it's a sad fucking way to live. It is no way to live, but, you know, you don't have my sympathy. You'll have it when you wake the fuck up and when you start undoing some of the damage that's been done. Because I feel bad for you up until the point that you start inflicting this shit on everyone else and you want everyone else to live in that same kind of fear, in the cult that you fucking operate in, because it is cultish. it's unacceptable to just push that on everyone else and expect us to just permanently, like, just live in fear and be told what to do and, like, treated like punching bags. So, yeah, I feel for them, but only up to a certain point, because I want to say this as well. Here's something else that I have gotten out of all of this. I would advise people to never sincerely engage in good faith with people who are there to control you, people who are there to subjugate you, people who want you dead but will settle for your compliance, who are not there to listen or understand or connect with you. They're there to hear you parrot what they want to hear. You are not a person to these people. You are just a talking flesh puppet to advance what they want. So, you know, like, I don't like to talk about it too much because, to be totally frank, I don't like being seen as a victim, and I'd rather just move on with my life. But I have said before, I've been in actual abusive relationships. I'm not going to get into the details. It's nobody's business. But when someone is actively, consciously, intentionally misinterpreting you in the worst and most hostile way possible, trust me when I say that is an intentional control and power tactic on their part. My ex did that to me. Routinely. A lot of, like, for a much, much longer than that should have ever been happening for. And it's not a matter of, like, you not being smart if you go for that. It's just a matter of wrongly thinking that something is a conversation and not a fucking battle that this person is rigging for them to win. So this is what I mean. Do not operate in good faith with people that are there to fucking destroy you. And, you know, if any of you have also been in emotionally and mentally abusive relationships, you know why, and you know how that story goes. When you are being sincere, when you are coming from a place of wanting mutual understanding and connection, and the other person does not want that, when the other person wants to just break you, they want you to submit to them, that is a fight you will always lose if you approach it in good faith, because it is not a conversation. They are not there to talk to you. And it is the exact same fucking thing with these people who, like I said, you're not a person to them. If you say anything out of line, they will come for your whole fucking life. And it's completely unacceptable. Like, we cannot continue to entertain that as if it's like a legitimate way to go through life. It's just not fucking happening. So, let me see if I had any other definitive points that I wanted to make. Yeah, I mean, there are a few people who I consider on the left. I think they consider themselves at least classical liberals, who I think have some very worthwhile points that are worth acquainting yourself with. George Lakoff has done a lot of work on, like, cognitive framing, and he talks a lot about if someone is presenting a certain, what he calls, frame to you. Think of a leading question like, how many times do you beat your wife? That's not saying, do you? That's not saying, like, what's the story? It's saying, okay, you're already guilty. I'm already painting you as guilty. So I'm going to watch you squirm while you struggle to defend yourself. That would be feeding the other person's frame instead of just rejecting it entirely and telling your story how you're going to tell it. There's also Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are, was it Divided by Politics and Religion? It's a fantastic book. I strongly, strongly recommend reading it. Both of them are, I would consider, some of the most intelligent, like, helpful people that the left has to offer. Do not quote me if Haidt is not actually left-wing. I don't fucking know. I don't obsess over the guy, but it was a very good book. So, where was I? It's a battle, blah, 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 feeding frames. Yeah, but when someone is... I'm just going to make this very clear, because we don't talk about these things in certain enough terms, but when someone is trying to beat you into conceding, please understand, for your own sake, if no one else's, that is not a conversation. So what you do with that, a lot of the time, to win, is to not play at all. For one, if you can at all relate to your intimate partner doing that to you, get the fuck out of there. Don't try to explain, like, you don't need to explain yourself. Just get the fuck out of there. That person is there to destroy you. They're there to break you. And with this whole political shit, I block very generously. I don't subscribe to this whole idea that, oh, blocking means that they got to me here. It's like, no, I'm just going to spend my time in other ways, because clearly you're trying to play some kind of power game. I thought we were here to, like, get somewhere, but if you're not, then I'm not dealing with you. So don't play the game, period, is really the way to win that. Block them, tell them to kick rocks. If you're really feeling petty, like, just throw memes at them. As Sun Tzu said, meme them until they cry, and then make memes of them crying. I think it's, you get to a point where it's a waste of time to be too petty with people. But if you're really feeling it, throw a few memes their way, and then call it, in my opinion. But fuck it. So let's see. Yeah, if you really care about talking to people who don't, agree with you, who you don't agree with on everything, which is a great fucking idea and we should all do more of, the baseline for that, let's just go back to the actual foundations of respect. It needs to be an actual conversation, meaning you are not going to be berated or harassed just for disagreeing, that you can actually say no. And it is funny to me how these people will always analyze and dissect and like just obsess over like consent in a romantic and sexual context, but they're consciously blind to the reality that a so-called conversation where I can't say no, and not only can I not say no and disagree with you, you will not just yell at me, but you will bully me and attack my character and slander me in public and try to get me blacklisted different places and potentially try to get me fired and attack my livelihood and make it so I can't feed myself and get me harassed forever because I still get shit from people. That's not a mutually consenting situation or conversation. As we know, there's no consent under the threat of coercion or force. So the fact that these people are consciously blind to that is very telling. That is just people trying to dominate you with the threat of coercion. So my input is just that these kind of conversations are often a lot more easy and just productive to do with the other person in real life, in person. That makes a huge difference, where you can actually show respect to each other, you can listen to tone, you can actually understand the context of what the other person is saying. Whereas online, even at the very best of times, you are basically getting excerpts and basically just these very clipped responses where you're getting zero other human input or interaction with them, and no fucking wonder that things don't go well. Twitter is already, I think Andrew Huberman, who's of Huberman Lab, who's a neuroscientist at Stanford, who I really love his podcast and his work in general. He had a whole podcast, I think, where at least a solid chunk of it was devoted to like the nitty-gritty details of why Twitter is the most aggression-inducing of all social media. I do not remember the reasons. You will have to look into it for yourself. But the fact that someone who actually is a neuroscientist was recognizing that and talking about the hows and the whys, that kind of confirmed my pre-existing intuition for me. So this goes back to, don't talk shit about what you're not willing to help with, or whatever the grass comment is. I think a lot of us, people who, like, if you're listening to my podcast, then you're probably sick of a lot of this shit yourself. So let's not stop with just, like, criticizing Twitter and criticizing the cowards on social media, which, I can do forever. If you want to buy me a drink, I'll fucking do it for hours. But I don't think it's super helpful to just rant about it. Let's focus on what these fucking cowards cannot do, which is just be decent human beings who are connecting over the actual magic in real life. Get good at that. Start doing that. Just show up in your real life community, and if you don't have one, make one. That is my 2 cents on that. So I am not going to castrate myself or silence myself just because some insecure high chair tyrants have decided that it is their time to shine. That is not something that I'm going to do. I'm not going to bend over. I'm not going to sit down and shut up. And I'm not going to comply with anyone that wants to break me. So I don't need to ask myself to choose between paganism and magic, or defending magic by pushing back against this destructive shit. You need to ask yourself if you're here to do magic or destroy it. and really think about that. So as much as I really want to end on that note, because it really is the crux of the issue, I do want to take some time to personally thank all of you who are here, who are still here, who listened to this when I started the show, when I was originally calling it Outlaw Preaches, and who are still listening now. I want to thank those of you who've waited through my hiatus and just my irregularities. I know I'm not good at consistency. I am trying. Because I did just stop recording mid-cancel, and I just had too much going on, and I was recalibrating what to do. But this is important. This is important to me, and I was reminded of that when I was starting to think that it wasn't very important by some of you who reached out to me and told me that basically it mattered and I needed to start doing it again. So thank you. I appreciate you guys. And I will say also, while I am going to make time for this because this matters, and I want to honor the fact that some of you like still actually give a fuck, which I'm just thankful. I do not regret my changing my tactics with how I use the internet in general, because at this point I'm very drive-by with Twitter. I will log on when, I don't know, when I feel like I want a few minutes spent on it here and there. I'll do a quick scroll, see what's kind of immediately on my timeline, maybe throw a comment here and there. Say what I have to say, like just shoot it off like a drive-by and then log off. And I don't regret that. I feel like I'm definitely a lot saner and a lot happier because of it. And I recommend it for you as well, because this shit is designed to literally make you anxious and addicted and aggressive and just not very magical. So I'm getting to the end of this rant. This is the part where I do my parting message for those of you who remember it, where I thank you again for listening, but now is the time to close your laptop, put down your phone, get outside, and go do some magic.